While I was going through my late mother's things, I found an old discontinued phone tucked away in the back of a drawer. It was the same one I'd used back in my senior year of high school. I thought I'd lost it a decade ago, but it turned out my mom had been hiding it all this time. I plugged it in, and as it powered up, the screen lit up with hundreds of unread messages. They were all from the same person, Silas Thorne. The last message was sent 3 years ago. Zoe, this is the last time I'll ever reach out to you. My mother only told me the truth about why she broke Silas and me apart right before she passed away. 1. Silas's mother was her bitter rival. 2. His mother had stolen her first love. 3. Silas looked too much like that man. After all these years, hearing the truth didn't exactly shock me, but it didn't leave me indifferent either. Maybe I was too calm, because even my mother let go of her obsession in her final moments. If you and Silas are meant to find each other again, don't let it slip away. I know you stayed away for years because of me. I was wrong, and I'll be watching over you both from above. My heart was a mess of emotions, trapped between resentment and regret. I aimlessly scrolled through the old phone. The lock screen was still a photo of Silas and me. Every app icon was part of a matching set we'd chosen together. Back then, dusty memories flooded back all at once, making my chest tighten painfully. In my flustered state, my finger accidentally brushed against the speed dial for number 1. The next second, Silas Thorne's name flashed on the screen. As the call connected, I snapped out of it and hung up immediately. It only rang for 2 seconds, so surely it didn't go through. My fingertips went numb and my heart hammered against my ribs. I quickly stood up, trying to focus on packing my mom's belongings into boxes. Suddenly, a violent vibration shook the room, acting faster than I could think. I lunged back for the old phone, but the old phone was silent. The noise was coming from the phone in my pocket. Let out a breathless, dry laugh and answered it, only to be hit by another bolt from the blue. My father's condition had worsened, and he was being rushed into emergency surgery. I scrambled to the hospital as fast as my legs would carry me. Outside the air, the red light was blindingly bright, making my heart lurch into my throat. The agonizing wait didn't last long before the doors swung open. An elite surgeon emerged, followed by a group of interns. I rushed forward immediately. "Doctor, how is my dad? Is he out of the word?" Danger died in my throat as the man pulled off his surgical mask. A face that was both familiar and hauntingly cold was revealed. The boyish voice I remembered had been replaced by a deep, steady baritone. "The patient is out of the woods." My feet felt like they were nailed to the floor, and I forgot how to breathe. The doctor who had just saved my father was Silas Thorne. Unlike my internal chaos, Silas looked perfectly indifferent. His vitals are stable for now, but he needs to be in the ICU for 24 hours of observation. We'll need more tests to pinpoint the bleed and monitor his recovery. His voice was flat, devoid of any emotion. "A nurse will go over the details with you shortly." Every move he made, scream and professional. Once upon a time, we made a pact to go to med school together and save lives. But I had broken that promise and chose to study photography instead. He finished speaking and began to walk past me. Silence. I couldn't help it. I whispered the name I'd screamed in my heart 1,000 times over the years. He stopped and turned slowly, his distant gaze landing on me. "Is there something else?" I opened my mouth, wanting to explain everything that happened back then, but my eyes fell on a faint smudge of lipstick on his collar, and the words choked in my throat. I lowered my gaze and shook my head. "Nothing. I just thank you for saving my dad." The silence between us was suffocating and stiff. Finally, Silas spoke coldly. "Why did you call me earlier? Did you need something?" My head snapped up. He had actually received that accidental call. For a brief moment, I found the courage to mention the past, but Silas cut me off with an annoyed expression. "In the future, don't call me unless it's an emergency. Our history is awkward, to say the least." Awkward. I managed a faint, bitter smile and twisted my fingers together, agreeing quickly, right. Of course, thing he was worried about wouldn't happen anyway. In 1 week, I was moving to New Zealand with my father. The air was better there, perfect for his recovery and perfect for my fresh start. Once he got the answer he wanted, Silas brushed past me. He was like a gust of wind that only touched my skin. For a fleeting second, I didn't stay there. I followed my father's gurney, walking in the opposite direction from Silas. My mother's sudden death had been a massive blow to my father. The first thing he asked for when he woke up after surgery was a photo of her when she was young. My heart trembled at the sight of him. There was no doubt my father loved my mother deeply. He loved me too. He was always the one trying to fix the rift between my mom and me. Even though he knew she never quite forgot her first love, he remained devoted to her until the end. I leaned over to comfort him. "I'll have Aunt Martha bring them over. You just need to." My words died as I noticed the chart at the head of the bed. Patient Arthur Rowan, attending physician Silas Thorne. I froze for a moment. My mind flashing back to our high school graduation ceremony. Silas had said he wanted to be a surgeon who traveled the world, saving people in need. The heart monitor suddenly began to beep rapidly. I snapped out of it instantly. I slammed the emergency button and ran out into the hall. "Doctor, someone help." I saw Silas sprinting toward the room, his expression grim. What happened? My heart was racing so fast I couldn't even form a sentence. "Don't panic. I'm here." He squeezed my shoulder briefly before rushing into the room. My heart, which felt like it was sinking in MUD, suddenly felt a tiny tug of hope. I followed him inside. Silas administered a sedative to my father. Slowly, the old man drifted back into a deep sleep. I let out a heavy sigh of relief and whispered thank you. Silas still looked like he was carved from ice. "I'll be checking on him every 3 hours. Don't go screaming in the halls. It's bad for the patients." He left as soon as he finished speaking. A nurse who was with him leaned in and whispered softly, "Don't take it personally. Dr. Thorne is always this cold. It's just his way." I gave her a small, tight smile. The nurse sighed. Her eyes filled with admiration. "Dr. Thorne saves all his warmth for his girlfriend. He's so talented that the top hospitals in the city tried to recruit him, but he refused just so he wouldn't have to be long distance with her. Can you believe that? Girlfriend?" Her words were like a pebble dropped into a still pond, causing ripples in my chest. I forced a smile. He sounds very devoted. So 3 years ago when he said it was the last message, was it because he had started dating her? I didn't let myself dwell on it. It was to be expected. It was only natural. I called my aunt and asked her to bring the photos to the hospital. But Aunt Martha had other things on her mind. "Now that you're back, stay for good. Your mother took your father's soul with her when she died. If you don't look after him, he won't last long." I hadn't told anyone about the immigration plans yet. Aunt Martha kept talking, but I was barely listening. "You're 30 now. You can't keep living in the past. Plenty of people fail at their first love, but they don't stay single forever." Gave a neutral hum. I never said I wouldn't get married. And it has nothing to do with my first love. I wouldn't even think of him if you didn't bring it up. I subconsciously rubbed the raised scar on my wrist and continued in a soft voice. "I've dated plenty over the years. It's just none of them felt right. They didn't really do anything for me." Before I could finish, a cold sneer sounded from behind me. "How hard could it be to please you?" I froze, my whole body turning stiff before I slowly turned around. Silas was standing at the door of the hospital room. I didn't know how long he'd been there. I awkwardly looked away, avoiding his piercing gaze. With a cold face, Silas walked into the room. He set a bottle of pills down on the nightstand with a heavy thud. "Give him one of these as soon as he wakes up." "Just one." I nodded quietly. I looked up, meeting his dark eyes. But the explanation I wanted to give died in my throat. I expected him to walk away as if nothing had happened. Instead, he pointed to a health poster on the wall. "A girl should have a little more self-respect. It's better for you and for society." I followed his finger to a poster about preventing STDs. There was a red ribbon and a cheeky, local slogan underneath that warned about the dangers of playing around with too many strangers. A wave of bitterness and hurt washed over me. I let out a soft, dry laugh. "Thanks for the concern, Dr. Thorne." Silas's face darkened and he turned to leave. "Dr. Thorne, when are you getting married?" I asked, casually. He paused but didn't look back. "That's none of your business." I know my gaze was flat. "I just meant that if you were planning on inviting old classmates, you can skip me. Don't bother sending an invitation." Silas let out a cold, mocking laugh. "You don't need to remind me you aren't exactly someone important to me." I rubbed the scar on my right wrist, staying silent for a few seconds before a faint smile touched my lips. "I'm glad we're on the same page. Otherwise it would be quite awkward for me." Silas's knuckles turned white as he gripped his clipboard. I looked away and pulled a chair over to sit by my dad's bed. "I'll press the call button if anything changes." With that, I leaned over the side of the bed and closed my eyes. I waited until the sound of his footsteps faded, and the door clicked shut. Only when the room was silent, save for my father's breathing, did I open my eyes. I tucked my sleeve down to hide the scar. When I closed my eyes again, a tear slid silently into the pillow, soaking into the fabric. I fell asleep right there, and slipped into a dream I hadn't dared to have in 13 years. It was a dream of a hot July afternoon, the sound of cicadas buzzing loud enough to drive a person crazy. In the dream, the exam results were out, and Silas and I had promised to go pick our colleges together. The next day we parted ways at the corner. He went east and I went west. I took my usual shortcut through the deserted area, marked for demolition. Then a nasty voice broke the silence from behind me. "Silas Thorne cost us our payday. It's only fair we have some fun with his girl, right?" I turned around to see 3 local thugs. They had been shaking kids down for protection money, until Silas caught them and called the cops. I ran as fast as I could, but they were like ghosts catching up to me. They dragged me into one of the abandoned houses. The dim yellow light pinned my shadow against the wall. I dug my nails into my palms, but I couldn't claw my way out of my own paralyzed body. Later, I put my clothes back on and went home. After that, I gave up on being a doctor. I played the fool and accepted my mother's decision to keep Silas and me apart. I pretended I didn't know. She'd used my phone to send him a breakup text. Pretended I didn't know she'd hidden my phone. I could never pick up a scalpel in this life anyway, because every time I held a blade, a dark, frantic thought would fill my mind. Kill them. I wanted to drive the blade into those monsters, pierce their hearts and make them pay in blood. A loud clap of thunder woke me up. A familiar male voice sounded right in my ear, thick and confused. Zoe, why did you break up with me back then? A loud clap of thunder woke me up. A familiar male voice sounded right in my ear, thick and confused. Zoe, why did you break up with me back then? I gasped, my eyes flying open. The hospital room was bathed in the dim, sterile glow of the hallway lights. Outside the window, rain was lashing against the glass. Silas was standing beside the chair, his hand resting on the back of it, leaning over me. In the shadows, his usually pristine white coat looked rumpled. The cold, unapproachable mask of Dr. Thorne had slipped, replaced by the ghost of the boy who had once promised to save the world with me. My heart hammered against my ribs, the lingering terror of the nightmare still gripping my throat. I pulled my arms tight around myself, ensuring my right sleeve was firmly pulled down. You were dreaming, Silas said, his voice dropping an octave, losing that edge of hostility. You were crying. You kept saying don't touch me. I swallowed the lump of ash in my throat. It was just a nightmare. I've been watching too many true crime documentaries. I tried to stand to put some distance between us, but my legs were numb from sleeping in the chair. I stumbled forward. Silas's reflexes were instantaneous. He caught me by the forearm to steady me. His fingers clamped right over my right wrist. Over the scar. I flinched violently, ripping my arm out of his grasp as if he had burned me. Don't. The sharp reprimand echoed loudly over the rhythmic beeping of my father's heart monitor. Silas froze, his hand still suspended in the air. His eyes darted from my face to my wrist, his medical intuition likely processing the texture he had just felt through the thin fabric of my sweater. Zoe, he started, his brow furrowing deeply. You asked why we broke up? I cut him off, my voice shaking but loud enough to build a wall between us. My mother. You know that now. She hated your mother. She took my phone, texted you, and I let her. I didn't care enough to fight for it. Is that what you want to hear? Silas slowly lowered his hand. The vulnerability in his eyes vanished, icing over once again. Right. Of course. How foolish of me to think there was anything deeper. He turned on his heel. Your father's vitals are stable. He should wake up by morning. I'll send the night nurse in. The door clicked shut. I sank back into the chair, buried my face in my hands, and let the remaining tears fall silently into my palms. Over the next 4 days, my father's recovery went smoother than expected. He was moved from the ICU to a private room. True to his word, Silas kept his distance. Whenever he came for rounds, he was flanked by interns and nurses, delivering his assessments with mechanical precision. He didn't look at me. I didn't look at him. It was exactly how it was supposed to be. In 3 days, our flight to Auckland would take off. On Thursday afternoon, I was at the hospital cafeteria grabbing 2 black coffees when someone slid into the booth across from me. She was beautiful. Sharp jawline, flawless makeup, wearing a tailored navy blouse under her open doctor's coat. The name badge read, Dr. Elena Vance. Cardiothoracic surgery. You're Zoe, she said. It wasn't a question. I'm Elena. The girlfriend. I offered a polite, detached smile. Nice to meet you. Can I help you with something, Dr. Vance? She stirred her tea, watching me with calculating eyes. Silas has been pulling back-to-back night shifts since your father was admitted. He claims it's to monitor a post-op bleed, but I know him. He's distracted. And Silas Thorne is never distracted. My father is his patient, I said evenly. Nothing more. We're moving to New Zealand on Sunday. Whatever you think is happening isn't. Elena stopped stirring. Her posture relaxed slightly, a triumphant gleam flickering in her eyes. Good. Silas has a brilliant future ahead of him. The last thing he needs is the ghost of a high school fling dragging him backward. He told me about how you left him. It wrecked him for a long time, but it made him the surgeon he is today. So honestly, thank you. Her words didn't sting. They just felt heavy, like wet wool draped over my shoulders. You're welcome, I said softly. I stood up, taking my coffees. Take care of him, Dr. Vance. He deserves a good life. When I returned to the room, my dad was sitting up, looking at a stack of old photos Aunt Martha had brought. He looked frail, but his eyes were sharp. "Zoe," he croaked, tapping a photo. It was a picture of my high school graduation. Silas was in the background, looking at me with a smile so bright it hurt to look at. "Dad, don't," I whispered, setting the coffee down. "He was in here earlier," my father said, ignoring my plea. "While you were getting coffee, he asked about your wrist." My blood ran cold. "What did you tell him?" "I told him I didn't know," my father sighed, leaning back against the pillows. "Because I don't." "Not really. I know you tried to leave us that September. Before college. I know you stopped taking photos for 2 years. And I know you lied to the police about how you got the cuts on your arms." "Dad, please." "He loves you, Zoe," my father said quietly. "A man doesn't look at a woman with that much anger unless there's a mountain of grief beneath it." "It doesn't matter," I snapped, harsher than I intended. "We're leaving Sunday." Friday night. The rain had returned, a torrential downpour that turned the city into a blurred canvas of neon and gray. I was at my childhood home, packing the last of my mother's things. The house felt cavernous and empty. I found a box labeled Zoe's junk in my mother's closet. Inside were my old sketchbooks, a broken light meter, and at the very bottom, a folded piece of paper. I opened it. It was a police summons, dated August 14th, 13 years ago. The day after the assault. The day I broke up with Silas. My mother had intercepted the mail. She had known. She had known what happened to me, and instead of holding me, she used it as an excuse to isolate me, to finally sever the tie between me and the son of her rival. A wave of nausea hit me so hard my knees buckled. I dropped to the wooden floor, gasping for air. The smell of dust and old paper morphed into the stench of damp, rot and cheap alcohol. The shadows in the room elongated, shifting into the shapes of 3 men. Silas Thorne cost us our payday. It's only fair we have some fun with his girl, right? I curled into a ball on the floor, pressing my hands over my ears. I couldn't breathe. My chest was a vice. I was suffocating. Suddenly, the front door downstairs was kicked open. Heavy footsteps pounded up the wooden stairs. "Zoe." The door to my bedroom flew open. Silas stood there, dripping wet, his chest heaving. He wasn't wearing his lab coat. He was in a plain black t-shirt soaked to the skin, looking wild and frantic. He saw me on the floor and crossed the room in 2 strides, dropping to his knees. "Zoe, hey, look at me. Look at me." I couldn't. I was thrashing, trying to push him away, terrified of the hands touching me. "Don't. Get off," I screamed, my voice tearing my throat. "It's me. It's Silas. You're safe. I'm here." His voice was a steady, grounding baritone. He didn't try to hold me down. He just sat beside me, keeping his hands perfectly visible, resting on his own knees. "Breathe with me, Zoe. Just breathe." It took 20 minutes. 20 minutes of him murmuring my name, telling me the date, telling me we were in my room, until the suffocating grip of the panic attack finally loosened. I slumped against the base of my bed, completely spent, shivering uncontrollably. Silas reached out slowly, telegraphing his movement, and pulled a blanket from the mattress, draping it over my shoulders. Only then did I see what he was holding in his other hand. It was a faded manila folder, a medical file from 13 years ago. He followed my gaze. His hands, the hands of a surgeon that never trembled, were shaking violently. "I looked up the hospital records from that summer," Silas said, his voice completely hollow. "You were admitted to St. Jude's ER the night of August 13th. Severe lacerations, bruising, a concussion, and a rape kit was administered." I closed my eyes. The secret I had guarded with my life was out in the open, bleeding on the floor between us. "Why didn't you tell me?" His voice broke. A tear slipped down his cheek, mixing with the rain. "Zoe, God, why didn't you tell me? I hated you for 13 years. I thought you threw me away because I wasn't enough. I thought you," he choked on a sob, running a hand through his wet hair. "Those were the guys from the demolition site. The ones I reported. They did this to you to get to me." "That's exactly why I couldn't tell you," I whispered, opening my eyes to look at him. "You were so bright, Silas. You wanted to save everyone. If you knew that your actions had caused that, it would have destroyed you. You never would have become a doctor. You would have spent your life drowning in guilt. So you drowned instead?" he yelled, the agony in his voice shattering the quiet room. "You let me believe you hated me? You let your mother lock you away? You tried to kill yourself, Zoe." He gestured wildly to my wrist. "I survived," I yelled back, tears finally spilling over. "I survived and you became exactly who you were meant to be. You save lives every single day. If I had to trade myself for the hundreds of people you've saved, I would do it. Again, we stared at each other, chests heaving, the space between us charged with 13 years of unspoken grief. Slowly, Silas crawled across the floor. He didn't ask. He just pulled me into his chest, burying his face in my neck. He cried. The cold, indifferent Dr. Thorne broke apart in my arms, sobbing with an abandonment that shook his entire frame. I tentatively lifted my arms and wrapped them around his back. It felt like coming home to a house that had burned down, devastating, but irrevocably mine. I'm so sorry, he whispered against my skin. I'm so sorry I didn't protect you. I'm so sorry I was cruel to you at the hospital. It's okay, I murmured, stroking his wet hair. It's in the past, Silas. We survived it. We stayed like that on the floor until the rain stopped. Eventually he pulled back. His eyes were red-rimmed, searching my face. Don't go to New Zealand. I gave him a sad, watery smile. I have to. His jaw tightened. I'll break it off with Elena. We're not. It's not real. Anyway, it's an arrangement. Our families, the hospital board. I've never loved anyone but you. I'll quit. I'll go to New Zealand with you. No, I said firmly, pressing a hand to his chest. Silas, you can't. You have a life here. Patients who need you. And I need to leave. I need to breathe air. That doesn't remind me of this room, of my mother, of the demolition site. I need to figure out who I am when I'm not carrying the weight of this secret. Then let me help you carry it. I've already put it down. I cupped his cheek. You're free, Silas. And now so am I. He looked at me, realizing I wasn't doing this out of martyrdom anymore. I was doing it for me. He closed his eyes, leaning into my palm, and nodded once. Sunday at the airport. My father was in a wheelchair, looking remarkably cheerful as Aunt Martha fussed over his luggage. I had checked my bags and was holding my boarding pass when I heard my name. Silas was walking toward us. He was back in his element, sharp suit, composed demeanor, but his eyes were entirely different. The ice was gone. He greeted my father warmly, then turned to me. He didn't make a scene. Didn't beg me to stay. Instead, he handed me a small, heavy box. Open it when you're in the air, he said softly. I looked up at him, my chest aching. Goodbye, Silas. Safe travels, Zoe. He stepped closer, kissing me gently on the forehead. The touch sent a warm shockwave straight down to my toes. Take care of yourself. I watched him walk away until he disappeared into the crowd. I didn't look back. Again. Hours later, somewhere over the Pacific Ocean, I opened the box. Inside was a vintage Leica camera lens, a model I had mentioned passingly in high school, one I had always dreamed of owning. Beneath it was a folded piece of hospital prescription paper. Silas's neat, blocky handwriting filled the page. Zoe, you spent 13 years in the dark, so I could stand in the light. Now, it's your turn to see the world. Capture it. Live it. Find your peace. I'm not asking you to wait for me. I'm asking you to let me wait for you. Take a year. Take 5. But when you're ready, when the ghosts are gone, leave a light on. Yours, Silas. I held the note to my chest, turning to look out the airplane window. The sun was rising over the horizon, painting the clouds in brilliant streaks of gold and pink. For the first time in 13 years, I smiled, and it reached my eyes. 2 years later, the coastal town of Wellington was battered by a brisk ocean wind, but inside the gallery, it was warm and buzzing with quiet chatter. It was my first solo photography exhibition. The theme was resilience. There were photos of my father, looking healthy and robust, tending to a garden. There were landscapes of the jagged, breathtaking New Zealand cliffs. But the centerpiece of the gallery was a single portrait hung at the very back. It was a photo taken from behind. A young man in a white doctor's coat, walking down a sterile hospital hallway. The lighting made it look as if he were walking out of the darkness and into the sun. I was standing near the appetizers, sipping sparkling water, when the bell above the gallery door chimed. I didn't need to turn around to know who it was. My heart recognized the shift in the air before my eyes did. I slowly turned. Silas stood in the doorway. He looked older, a little more rugged, dressed in a thick wool sweater that suited the Wellington weather perfectly. His eyes scanned the room, bypassing the art, until they locked onto me. The gallery seemed to melt away. He walked toward me, his hands in his pockets, a tentative, nervous smile playing on his lips, a smile I hadn't seen since we were 18. He stopped a foot away. He looked at my wrist, now adorned with a silver watch, and then up to my eyes, clear and free of shadows. The air here is nice, he said, his voice washing over me like a warm tide. It is, I replied, my pulse humming a steady, joyous rhythm. Did you come far? About 13 years, Silas said softly. He pulled his hands from his pockets. In his left hand he held a sleek, silver scalpel box. In his right, a brand new roll of camera film. He offered me the film. I hear you're taking applications for a new subject. I have excellent references and an incredible amount of vacation time saved up. I laughed, a bright, unburdened sound that echoed through the gallery. I reached out, bypassing the film, and wrapped my arms around his neck. Silas dropped everything, catching me by the waist, burying his face in my neck, just as he had on the floor of my childhood bedroom. But this time there were no tears of grief. You're hired, I whispered against his skin. He pulled back, his dark eyes shining with absolute clarity, and kissed me. It wasn't a kiss born of desperate youth, nor of traumatic pasts. It was the quiet, deliberate promise of a future. The storm had finally passed, and the light was perfect.